Welcome back, boys and girls, to the Big Bible Show. We're glad that you're here watching. And today, what does the word hardened and Play-Doh have to do with our story? The word of the day is hardened and Play-Doh. What does that have to do with our story? Well, let's find out. We're glad that you're here. All right, on the Big Bible Show. Now, you remember, boys and girls, where we left off last week was the exciting story of, we've been looking at Moses the last 2 weeks, how, remember 2 weeks ago, he was his birth, how his mother hid him in the Nile River, and he ended up being found by the daughters of Pharaoh, and he was raised, and his mother was able to take care of him and teach him his identity, because Moses is a part of the Hebrew people that the Bible tells us. Remember, God promised to Abraham and all of his family descendants, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, and now Moses, that God is going to bless all people through this family. And so that's what the story is about. And so Moses is now 40, remember, and he has to flee Egypt because he killed, remember, one of the Egyptian masters. And so he was 80 and God called him at the burning bush. You remember that story last week? And God said, I want you to go back to Egypt and tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And remember, God gave Moses some signs to show Moses that he would be with God, that God was with him. And finally, after Moses' excuses were no good, God gave him let his brother Aaron go with him. And so remember, we left off last week where Moses and Aaron went off back to Egypt, where they would tell Pharaoh, let my people go. Now remember, Pharaoh is the leader of the land of Egypt. They're the most powerful people in the world at this time. And the Pharaoh is a very harsh, mean ruler. And he is a hard man. And he enslaves the Israelites, the Hebrew people, into slavery, forced labor and work. And he is hard on them. And of course, God sees that, and he wants to save his people from that bondage. And there's Pharaoh right there. Doesn't he look hard? Just, he is just, his heart is so hard. Now, the Egyptians worshipped all kinds of gods. They didn't believe, boys and girls, in the one God of the Bible that you and I believe and we know is true. And so Pharaoh and the Egyptians worshipped all kinds of gods. They thought those gods would protect them. They even made statues to those gods. Some of those gods were in the form of frogs, crocodiles, even geese. All these animals they made into gods and worshipped, and they thought those gods would protect them. Even their Nile River they thought was holy water that the gods would protect Egypt. And so he's about to find out the hard way that there's only the one true living God, and that's the God of Moses and God's people. And so Aaron and Moses go to Pharaoh with this challenge, this task to tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And just like last week, boys and girls, Moses is back here with us in the Big Bible Show studio. Come on out, Moses.
Hey, kid. Oh, that's slippery. Hey, kids. It's me, Moses.
All right. Welcome back to the Big Bible Show.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, well, this story, I'm telling you what now. Last week was amazing, the burning bush, and God calls you to go back to Pharaoh in Egypt. Those signs he gave you.
Yeah.
But that was really just the beginning.
Yes.
And so here we go. We begin where you and Aaron go back to Egypt, and you know this is not going to be easy, right?
I put up quite a fight. I kind of kicked and screamed a little bit,
right.
But finally agreed, and now it's the big show.
Now it's the big challenge, and so you're going to have to go back and face your past. And so you go back before Pharaoh, and you've got your brother Aaron with you, and some of the Israelites are even there because they remember you, they know you.
That's right.
It's been a few years, 40 years, but
changed a bit.
Yeah, changed a bit. But so you go before Pharaoh and you give him God's message, which is let my people go.
That's right.
Pretty easy to remember that, right?
Let my people go.
Let my people go. And Pharaoh's not having any of that, right?
No, I mean, slaves are real important to the way Pharaoh does things, and I mean,
it's free labor.
It's free labor,
right?
Yeah, you don't have to pay them.
Yeah. So he says, I don't know this God. Who are you? And I'm not letting anybody go.
That's right.
And so, he even actually, and boys and girls, the story today is found in Exodus 4 into Exodus 10. So we're going to kind of just summarize, but actually the first thing he says is, he says he's going to make it harder on the Israelites. He's like, you have to make the same bricks that they would make. The Egyptians made all these buildings and the pyramids and all their buildings, and they needed all that brick. To make that brick, they used the Israelites, and so they made those bricks with straw and hay. And now he says, I'm not going to give you the straw and hay anymore, but you got to make the same amount of bricks. So you kind of made things harder.
Oh, and they were not happy. The Israelites were
not
happy.
Weren't some of them even like, it's just better to stay here.
I'm trying to free them. I'm God and I,
right?
But I understand.
Yeah. Now their job is harder because you showed up with this message from God. So this is some tough times. God says, hey, he's going to do some great signs and wonders. Hey. And you remember one of the signs, that he gave you with that?
That's right.
What that was what? Did you throw it down?
Throw it down and turn it into a snake.
And so you do that, and Pharaoh had his magicians and sorcerers, and they could trick people with magic, and they're kind of able to do the same thing, but what happened to your snake? What?
That was crazy. Okay, so my staff snake ate their staff snake.
Yeah, she's really showing them who's the real guy.
It was weird. You couldn't even tell. Looking at the staff afterward, it didn't get fat or anything. It was just God's so cool.
Yeah, went back to the staff, and then another. Remember, boys and girls, one of the other miracles we talked about, that one of the signs God said was the Nile River. So what? He told Aaron to go over there and take his staff and to put it in the water, and it became blood.
That's right.
Yeah.
And not just red, but real stinky. That's blood.
Yeah. So you guys basically now start these. You start these the plagues.
Right.
And so another plague is talking about these frogs.
I like frogs.
Okay. Yeah, I like frog every now and then.
You guys like to catch frogs and play with them? Imagine would you say millions?
I don't know how many. Thousands. I mean, who knows?
Too many frogs. They're just all over the place.
All over the place.
You ever stepped on a frog?
It even says it says in the passage that it got in their food and their houses and on their tables.
Yeah.
I mean, frogs everywhere.
No, I don't really want frogs to be everywhere.
Yeah, look at it here. I mean, they're just now you're before Pharaoh, and frogs are everywhere.
Yeah.
And but Pharaoh is still not having it.
Right.
He is just, his heart is hard.
Yes.
Hard. I mean, he is just a hardened man, and so he's not going to have this. So another plague is these little gnats.
Yeah.
You're gnats. They can be real, and they often will be in a swarm of them when you walk down a dirt road or out in the country. All of a sudden, they'll just get in your face if you've ever ran into some gnats.
You ever swallowed one before?
Oh.
You just coughing, or they get in the eye.
Right.
That's.
And usually they're just in one little spot, so then you can kind of move away and get away from them. But these gnats were everywhere.
Every spot was taken up by a
gnat. On your mouth and
donkeys.
On your donkey. Yeah. And then, it's kind of related to that, he has flies. Now, you guys know, boys and girls, what flies are.
Yeah.
And, when you're eating food outside for a picnic, isn't that wonderful when they get on your food? And
it's like a grown-up gnat. It's worse.
Yeah, grown-up gnat. Absolutely. And so these flies are everywhere.
Yeah.
And, Pharaoh starts to, just when you think, maybe he's going to soften a little bit with God's word comes through Moses to let the people go. He says, well, I'll let them go out and worship. And, but they got to come back. Well, that was not what God wanted them to be free.
Thanks for that, but also...
And so, he kind of... Pharaoh gives a little bit that he might give in, but no, he's not. And so that's when these plagues can... Now, here's what's interesting, Moses. You remember, the Israelites lived in a part of Egypt called Goshen.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is when these plagues were happening, the Israelites, the Hebrews, were not being affected.
That's right.
So here they are over here in Goshen, and there's no frogs and flies.
Sends a pretty clear message.
Yeah, it tells you who is the true living God.
Yeah.
And so here's the Hebrews, and they're enjoying life at least as best they can, not having all those frogs and flies and
that's right
and gnats. But Pharaoh just still will not listen. And then you have God says, you say that you're going to kill the animals, the livestock.
That's right.
Boy, that's kind of sad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these aren't just pets, right? I mean,
well, they're important.
Right. Why are they important? I mean,
yeah, I mean, you think about a cow. All the stuff that a cow does for you.
Milk.
I like a good ice cream.
Yeah.
That's it. If you don't have that, no ice cream.
We had some, hamburger. I mean,
yeah.
You get
oh my
meat.
goodness, burgers are delicious.
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of. So this is affecting their food, their livelihood, and so God strikes down their livestock.
Right.
Now this one here, boils, like sores.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever had one of those boys and girls, like a red sore, a boil that kind of just gets on your skin, and they were all over their bodies.
Yeah. Ugh. Itchy, painful,
gross. Painful. I don't know if they scabbed open, and you scratch them. You've ever had a scab that just kind of,
Yeah, I think that might have been one of my least favorites. Just to watch happen. I felt so bad,
Yeah, this is, and one of the things Pharaoh says at this point, he says, well, I'll let the men go, but the women and children have to stay. Kind of like he kind of knew that he would have them. They're not going to leave without their wives and children.
Well, like I would leave the kids behind.
Yeah, and so again,
or the wives.
Pharaoh's trying to kind of manipulate and try to go halfway with what God is saying.
Yeah.
But you don't play with God. When God tells us something, we do it. And Pharaoh's heart continues to harden. Then he has Aaron lift up his rod and cause a great lightning and thunderstorm over the land. Now, I've been in some pretty scary thunderstorms.
Recently.
Yes. And, usually they pass after an hour or two.
Yeah.
They don't stick around. This was for, several days. Mm-hmm. And that's all it did was thunderstorm and lightning and even hail. What's hail? Like big chunks of ice?
That's right.
And so
did up your cars.
Yeah, we had a hailstorm recently around here, and it did a lot of damage to people's homes and cars. Well, these are big, giant. These can kill you.
Oh yeah.
And they look at this poor guy. I mean, again,
that's like golf ball or softball size hail right there.
The Egyptians again are being devastated by this, but God's people are not.
Uh-huh.
God is protecting His people,
right.
showing them who the true God is. And so now, grasshoppers.
Yeah, those are kind of fun to catch.
Yeah, one by themselves, right?
Yeah. Again, we're just like with the frogs and the flies and the gnats. When you take one, not so bad, but
these are like locusts, but they're basically giant flying, grasshoppers, and all over the land.
Well, and what do they eat?
They eat everything.
Everything. Yeah.
I mean, this is devastating to the crops and the produce and everything on their land.
Even the trees,
the trees.
Yeah, they ate everything.
Everything. They just go crazy. And so locusts everywhere. Now this is one, boys and girls, I don't know if you like the real dark at night, if you've ever been out when it's really dark.
Yeah.
It's okay when you got light and you kind of, you're safe.
You can see the stars.
But God causes for 3 days darkness all over the land.
Yeah, no stars, no moon.
You couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
Wow. After, I guess that'd be fine if you were sleeping for a little bit, but then you want to get up during the day, it's pitch dark.
Yeah. Have you ever been in a cave?
Oh, a cave, yeah.
I've been in a cave once, and we had those little candles, they told us to blow the candle out. Dark. Way dark.
So, darkness over the land. Again, Pharaoh, he's just a hard guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think all of this would make you say, okay, I'm going to do what God says.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy is just not having it.
He's made up his mind.
Yeah.
That's what he's done.
And now this is almost like just making him even more hard, right?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the Bible says that on several occasions, boys and girls, that his heart, God was hardening his heart with these plagues. And then it says Pharaoh hardened his own heart.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting that, what God is doing with Moses and his word and these plagues is just hardening Pharaoh's heart even more. Stubborn.
Yeah.
And so finally, Moses, you say, okay, there's going to be one last plague.
Right.
And this one, I mean, none of these have been playing around. But this one now is going to be the death of the firstborn.
This one was sad.
Wow. And so, sure enough, over the whole land of Egypt, every firstborn child was struck down.
That's right.
And even it says Pharaoh's own house.
Yeah.
His own child.
He lost somebody.
Yeah. So now, I mean, wow, it's affected his people, their land, and now his own children, his own family, his stubbornness.
Right.
And finally, I mean, he just kind of reluctantly, angrily just says, all right, you can leave.
Get out of here.
Get out of here.
I'm sick of you.
And there he is right there saying, get out of here. Unfortunately, it's going to be short-lived, right? He's not going to just let them go.
He's a stubborn guy.
He's going to change his mind and actually try to take them back and come after them.
That's an interesting story.
That's another story, yeah. I think some water got parted and something like that.
That was fun.
But that might be for another story. You know, I think about, what do we think about this? And we think about our word of the day, hard or hardened. What do you think about when you think about us and our lives today not having a hard heart, being hardened like Pharaoh?
Well, do you kids like to play with Play-Doh? I like to, you know how God made the snake out of the staff? I like to make snakes, real easy to do. Yeah. But in order to do that, you know, you need some soft stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, you take this little glob and roll it out, and it doesn't have to be a snake, but that's kind of a fun one to do.
You can make all kinds of things because it's soft. You can shape it and mold it. And
one of those toys that come with it, and you turn it into food. You eat it, but
food. We used to, and they've got all these little knives and things you can cut the Play-Doh and make every little piece imaginable.
But it only works
if it's soft.
If it's soft, that's right. You want to play with that?
Yeah.
Okay. But have you ever let Play-Doh sit out too long? I've had that happen before.
Yeah, maybe your parents say put it up and and you leave it out.
Yeah, you go to open it and it's like
you go on a trip.
It's kind of like this stuff, right? This is a different kind of Play-Doh. It's a modeling clay, and it has gotten to where it's gotten harder.
It's not soft anymore.
You can kind of hear it. And then it's kind of a squish.
Yeah.
This one, I can't squish it.
You really can't shape it.
Yeah. You can't do much with it. I don't know if you can do anything with it, honestly.
Become hardened.
When you leave that Play-Doh, if you were to take that out on a sunny day and leave it out, that sun beaten down on it would actually take all that good squishiness out of it, and it would become hard as a rock. Meanwhile, you've got if you were to put something like chocolate out in the sun. You guys ever had chocolate melt on you? It's still, I kind of like it. I kind of like to eat it melty. But, you go and you're like, oh man, that was in my pocket. You leave chocolate out in the sun and it just turns into a puddle, right? So, you see the sun doing different stuff to different things. For Play-Doh, where you want it to be soft, you leave that out in the sun, it's rock hard. But as chocolate, you leave that out in the sun, it softens up. It's a lot like Pharaoh's reaction to God.
Yeah. God
was doing all this great stuff, great and powerful, I would say.
Right.
It wasn't good what was happening to them, but it was undeniable that God was working.
Yes.
And yet, instead of having that soft heart, having that emotion affect you, and relenting, Pharaoh doubled down and said, I'm going to make it even worse, for myself and my people.
And that's kind of what sin will do to us. Sin is when we don't do what God has asked us to do.
That's right.
And we don't obey His commandments, and even the Hebrew writer talks about that. And he's even speaking during a time later on in Moses' life when the people are struggling with sin. And he says, encourage each other, as it's called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. We don't want to be hardened by sin. Sin is doing what we want to do, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like maybe if our mom and dad or our grandma or grandpa, if someone asks us to do something, maybe our teacher at school,
right?
And maybe we don't want to do it. Maybe we want to stay outside and play, or we want to do our homework.
I love playing.
We don't want to clean our room up. But
I don't like doing that.
When we refuse to obey and listen, that can cause us to become hard.
Yeah.
And it gets easier next time to not listen and want to obey.
That's right.
And so the important lesson is to be soft and do what God calls us to do.
That's right.
Don't let sin deceive us into thinking it's better to do what you want to do, because Pharaoh didn't want to do what God was asking him.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't want to do, but we want to have soft, good hearts that listen to God and His Word. And so don't let your heart be hardened, right?
That's right.
Let's not do that, boys and girls. Let's let our hearts be open and soft to God and His Word. Well, I think we want to sing one song. You're going to stick around for one song, right?
I can do a song.
Tell us about a song you were thinking we could sing.
Okay. One of my favorite animals in the Nile River is the hippopotamus.
Hippopotamus.
And there's a song about a hippopotamus that we can sing. Let's sing it together. In the beginning God made the seas and the forest filled with trees. He made the mountains up so high, and at the top He placed the sky. God's fingerprints are everywhere, just to show how much He cares. In the middle He had lots of fun when He made the hippo that weighs a ton. Hip, 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 hippopotamus. Hip, hip, hooray, God made all of us. Hip, 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 hippopotamus. Hip, hip, hooray, God made all of us.
Yeah, he sure did. And boys and girls, let's follow God, the God who is the one true God who loves us, wants us to follow Him. So, boys and girls, we will hopefully see you next week. Okay,
That's right.
Thanks for being here, Moses.
Oh, yeah.
Bye.
Bye.